Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. So the drumbeat is growing louder to get Matt Gaetz. The media, the left, the insiders, they're trying to get their hands on details of that report. Pressure is growing to release it. I have better minds discussing what's happening with the nomination process. We'll fold Gaetz in there, but I got to tell you, right now, I want to focus less on who is doing the bidding and more on what the bidding of this administration will be, okay? We now know that the Department of Government Efficiency, okay, their primary target, we now know what it is, and I got to tell you, may sound too good to be true. Government waste, almost redundant as a term, right? We all think government wastes our money. And you add to that the idea of the boogeyman of the deep state, and you have the ingredients of a mega promise. The government is not run by whom you elect, but by a shadow government of faceless bureaucrats. And they are the ones doing all the bad and wasteful things. So now Trump has the ultimate outsiders, more outsider even than he himself, to do the job. Ramaswamy and Musk. Muskaswamy, as the tabloids may dub the power couple. Disclosure, I am impressed with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. And I am open to businessmen getting a crack at government efficiency. Michael Bloomberg. Bloomberg did a good job here in New York City as mayor, in part for that reason. Now, small point, but it was a little sus for the new agency that they had, the Department of Government Efficiency, which better be pretty lean itself in terms of staffing, to be named to match Musk's cryptocurrency, D.O.G.E, Department of Government Efficiency, D.O.G.E. Just remember it in case ethics allegations come out about some kind of conflict for him. They'll bring it up, you'll see. But beyond that BS, the ideas that they just released in the Wall Street Journal should be getting more attention. They cite 2 SCOTUS cases limiting the ability of agencies to create regulations as a basis for identifying and having Trump basically deactivate all this red tape in a way that we have never seen before, and as such, freeing up the economy from needless regulations. Sounds good. But is that how it works? First problem, the last major recession was caused by once celebrated deregulation. And there is a case to be made that much of our regulation has grown over time to counter legit concerns. Then again, I don't know a single business owner who doesn't complain about too much regulation stifling startups and growth. So let's get to the main other obstacle here. It's going to be the law. They're definitely onto something, but they're overstating the 2 rulings. How? The court did curb agencies' ability to come up with their own reckonings of law and regulatory reach, but it wasn't a complete shutdown. Courts may review agency moves more critically now, but usually do uphold regulatory decisions because Congress most often gives agencies broad discretion. So legally, I think they're going to trigger litigation here. And you can say, it's all right. They anticipate that, and they do. But it may stall efforts, and they only have a few years to get anything done. Now, here are the bigger considerations. And they're questions, okay? The main one is what they cut. I hope they at least try to have the agencies give a list of what could be looked at. They do know the best. And you can always ignore it and defer to DOGE's own syndicate of embedded personnel to make the calls. Next is who they will cut and how many. Cutting people may not be as appealing as cutting rules. Ramaswamy boasts that these changes will result in the mass headcount reductions across the federal bureaucracy. And they're going to force people to come back to work from remote working, and that will also trigger a wave of people quitting. Layoffs sound great if they're not you, but the you here is big. How many people do you think work for the government in the agencies? Here's a hint. It's America's largest employer. It's over 2 million people, not counting over 1 million plus in the military. All 50 states have a footprint, and somewhere around half of them make less than 75 grand. So I hope they're careful about who gets cut, right? People are hurting enough as it is. Will they be careful? We'll see. They're also targeting public broadcasting and Planned Parenthood. Those are 2 pet enemies of the right. I don't know what resistance that will bring, but it'll be something. Now, the best chance that Ramaswamy and Musk have of making a difference at DOGE is that neither needs to be confirmed. And that may wind up being a bigger challenge with at least a couple of these picks than Trump is banking on. So let's bring in, for perspective on this and much more, the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show, Stephen A. Smith.
What's up, my man? How are you?
I don't like to comment on how you dress every time you come on, but damn, you brought your A game. So, government waste, easy sell, right?
Easy, very, very easy. Most Americans believe that our money is being wasted, and that's what really, really turns us off about an inordinate amount of politicians. We consistently wonder what the hell are they doing with our money. That's why anytime you're talking about taxes, if you're talking about not raising taxes, you automatically appeal to a vast majority of voters, because what they're saying is, okay, the people that were asking us for our money never truly identify for us what they're actually doing with those dollars and why they keep coming to us every 2 to 4 years asking for more and more and more. So anytime somebody's talking about, eradicating government waste and sort of curtailing the level of spending, that's something that's going to appeal to a lot of people.
So I think the what is an easy sell. The who, though, you got to be careful with.
Absolutely.
And, they're talking about, hey, when we get rid of all these regulations, there'll be, mass layoffs. And we're going to tell people you got to come back to work. No more of this remote thing.
Right.
And that'll have even more people will quit. A lot of people work for the government.
Well,
I think people like that?
They're not going to like it because obviously people are far more comfortable. All of us, if we can work at home as much as we want to, that's something that we would definitely, enjoy. The flip side to it, however, is this. Regardless of how much we want to deny it, everything comes down to money. So when somebody's going to work 5 days a week, understand that's fueling the economy to such a degree. Whether it's gas in your car from driving, whether it's public transportation you're utilizing or whatever, you're fueling the system in a way. And people look at it, especially people in the business community look at it, and plus people in business like a level of control, particularly if you're a business owner. And when people are at work, you kind of have an indication of how hard they're working, how efficient they are, what they're actually doing, as opposed to if they're not in the office as well. So they bring those things up. You're going to have naysayers to that, but you're also going to have supporters of that. So I don't think that's a deal breaker per se. But I think in the case of Musk, we also need to take this into consideration. Yes, he's one of the, if not the richest man in the world, but we have to also think about this. As an owner of Twitter, cost about $44 billion. There's some question marks as to whether or not it's really, really worth that. As a matter of fact, a lot of people say, no, it's not worth that much. Did you ever pay for it? Did you use your own money? How much level of trust do you warrant? And he's going to have to prove that to the American people, because, again, if Trump just gets to take his advice and then exercise things via executive order, then essentially what that comes down to is the American people having to trust that the advice that he is receiving from Elon Musk measures up to snuff. And that's going to be a question mark for a lot of people. For some, they may not care. For others, they might.
I'm smelling what you're cooking, but I need a little bit more seasoning.
Okay.
When you say that there'll be questions about how he did the X transaction, forgetting about Tesla and Starlink and the other things that he does, what does that mean?
No, I don't mean, I'm certainly, listen, I'm not an expert on that. I can only go by the things that I read and the things that I hear. That's y'all lane, not mine. What I will tell you is that when you hear that it was $44 billion and usually people are not using their own money, you understand they're getting assistance from the banks, they're getting assistance from outside sources, and then ultimately that's not even worth the price that you supposedly paid, and then the IOUs come in, but all of a sudden you're working for an administration that's overseeing the White House, and you're having dominion over policy that's about to be implemented because you're the right hand and the right ear of the president, then people are going to obviously be very, very suspicious about that. I'm not saying it's me. I'm just saying that that's the kind of thing that people are going to say, and we can't summarily dismiss that, particularly when it comes to American taxpayers' money, because religiously that has been abused by politicians on Capitol Hill all the time. Now, Trump may not want to think he's a politician. He may want to think he's an outsider that sort of invaded Capitol Hill. But once you're a part of Capitol Hill, newsflash, you're a politician.
You think that Trump is banking that a couple of his appointments get dinged and that he did this to be provocative? Or do you believe he's making a bet on his own leverage? And is he right about that bet, given that his choice for a Senate leader, Scott, didn't get the leadership?
It could be a combination of both. With him, you never know, because he doesn't, according to him, he's not a politician. He's a businessman and a deal maker. And what does Bill O'Reilly come on this very show and say on numerous occasions? He's a deal maker. So again, if you really swing for the fences per se, and somebody wants to force you to capitulate, you might throw somebody to the wolves, throw them against the wall. All right, I might have to give up this, I might have to give up that. But if you want me to give up that, here's what I want on this side of the fence. With Trump, you can never rule that out. I never forget forget the story that he was talking to somebody years ago about Bolden and how he would bring him in, national security guy. He would bring him in. And he said, you know what? He wanted to bomb everybody. Bomb, 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 bomb. He said, I thought he was crazy. But then I recognized it was to my advantage to bring him in the room because when I had him with me, everybody that I was speaking across with from the table from foreign nations was scared that we were going to bomb them just because he was sitting next to me and he didn't say a word. And I'd get what I want done. These are the kind of things that he has said publicly. And so knowing that that's his level of thinking, you can't put anything past him as to what the possibilities may be as to why he may choose the people that he's choosing. Even somebody like Matt Gaetz or Hegseth or whomever that he's hoping to be the defense secretary or the attorney general or anything like that. You can't put anything past Trump in that regard.
Am I wrong to already be a little fatigued of the Gaetz, Hegseth drama about whether they're going to get confirmed? I know we're like 60 days away from this administration even starting, but I'm like the report. He quit from the Congress, which, by the way, goes to your point.
Yes.
I wonder if Trump would set him up to not get confirmed after he quit Congress, unless he quit Congress because he didn't want the report to come out. But the idea of, here we go again. Yeah. Every move he makes, we put under the microscope forever. Yeah, it matters who you put in your cabinet, but look, either the Senate's going to confirm him or not.
Well, here's where I think it gets interesting, in particular with Gaetz. With Hegseth, you were a host on Fox News over the weekend, and all of a sudden you're overseeing a department exceeding over 3 million people. That's a bit extreme, okay? So in that regard, you could just understand people questioning whether or not he's ready. They might bring some other things into the equation, but what they're really questioning is what makes you qualified to handle such an enormous responsibility. In the case of Representative Gaetz, here's where it gets interesting. He's despised by some of his own contemporaries on the GOP side. And so it's going to be interesting. You can't stand him. Under normal circumstances, you'd never, let him pass confirmation and let him in this position. But do you throw all of that out of the window because of Trump? And if that is the decision that you make, then basically it cements the thought that what Trump wants, Trump is going to get from all of the Republicans, which means, once again, we are as divided as ever before.
Yeah, I get the loyalty point coming from Trump's perspective.
So do I.
But there has to be a balancing concern. I don't think he has this concern, but you would, which is, I got to have better minds around me.
Yeah.
I got to have people who have different ideas. I got to bounce it off of me, even if it's just Socratic.
If you're the smartest guy in the room, it's a problem. Anytime you're a leader, you always want people that are smarter than you, more well-informed than you, better than you, etc., because they make you better. If you believe that you're the best, okay, then it's a problem. We know what he did with other cabinet members. A lot of them exited, and we know how an inordinate amount of them have spoken about him. In this particular instance, obviously, he's highlighting loyalty. He's prioritizing loyalty, rather, above all else. We understand that to some degree because you can't have disloyal individuals working in your cabinet. The flip side to it, however, is that you're the president of the United States of America. You've got a country to run. And in order to do so efficiently and productively, you not only need loyalists, you need people who are highly competent and are in position to give you the best advice possible, and those who are willing to do it in the best interest of the country, not you. And what you're asking Donald Trump to do is to not be narcissistic in that regard. And we've known him to be a lot of things, but narcissistic is usually above all else.
That idea of what got you here, will it get you where you want to be?
Yes.
We'll see. Stick with me, and I want to tease, Stephen A., I made a point about athletes this weekend doing the Trump dance. Bones Jones doing the Trump dance when he gave a kick like the kind I've never seen before to Stipe Miocic. But he had a very different take on it, and I want to match it up with the one and only Bill O'Reilly, just for the kind of cultural kind of reverberations of this election. And we'll talk about what's going to happen with these big picks. And guess who came out swinging at Trump's picks? Nikki Haley. Bill O'Reilly comes in next to set us straight. Stay with us. Back now with the best-dressed man in the business, Stephen A. Smith, the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Joining us is author extraordinaire, historian, friend of show, Mr. Bill O'Reilly. Good to see you, Bill. I was talking before the break. You heard us, I'm sure. I used the point yesterday that, hey, we're getting a little look at how the country received what was pitched to them about this election, not just in the underperformance, not just in less people coming out, but you saw athletes this weekend in the NFL games doing the Trump dance. You do John Bones Jones in an epic win doing the Trump dance. Black athletes doing this. What does that mean to me about the message? Stephen A. had a very different take. He was very pissed about this, but for a different reason. Why?
Well, for me personally, I felt like people were in hiding and were fearful of acknowledging and admitting their support for Trump. And it was indicative of how far the country has regressed. Regardless of what you may feel or why, you have a right to feel whatever way that you want to feel when it comes to voting for a particular candidate. If you decide that Roe v. Wade is not as important to you as the economy, as the border, as crime in the streets of New York, you should not be fearful of acknowledging and admitting that. If you're going with a paycheck, if you're working in the state of California and more than 14% of your money is going away in state income taxes, not even adding federal and FICA and everything else in between, and that's your priority, it shouldn't be a situation where you're literally petrified of articulating that position. And to me, when you saw the players, dancing and doing the Trump or whatever, they basically were making the statement that, you know what, we don't mind that he won it all. We don't feel like he's abhorrent. We're going to stand on the fact that we support it and we're good with it. Mm-hmm. Now, whether you like that or not, that shouldn't be cause for concern to the point where you got to be worried about losing your damn job or something like that. And that's why I was upset, because it was indicative of the fear that existed prior to the election results coming out.
First time I saw it on another network, doesn't matter which, they only showed a couple of white players doing it. And I thought that was a little coded, too, because obviously it wasn't just white guys. Bill, you have a take on this, or you want me to ask you about something else?
Yeah, I'm going to set the record straight on a whole number of things right now. If you guys will just indulge me for
please.
45 minutes. Number one, Trump stole that dance from Jay and the Techniques, apples, peaches, pumpkin pie. All right, so if you Google them, you'll see that Jay had that dance way before Donald Trump. Number two, I'm smelling what you're cooking. Very good, Cuomo. Very hip. I wrote that down, and I'm not going to use it, but I wrote it down. Number three, for Stephen A., I don't want to be surrounded by smarter people. That's why I do the Cuomo show. All right? If I wanted to be surrounded by smarter people, I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. Present company, Stephen A. excluded.
Yeah, good, smart move.
So, and number four, and the most important, is that very few people understand how Donald Trump is going to run the country the second time around. It is going to be totally different than the first time. And this is why there's so much chaos and confusion. So the first time he got elected in 2016, Trump didn't know what he was doing, and he admitted that. And he took advice from a lot of people, and he appointed standard people like Jeff Sessions to run Justice, disaster, the oil guy to be Secretary of State. It was ridiculous. This time around, Trump believes that he has figured it out. So all he wants is what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. He wants a cabinet that will do everything he says. He doesn't need policy coming out of those people. All he needs is for them to pick up the phone when Stephen Miller, the deputy chief of policy, calls and says, the president would like you to do this, and they say, yes, sir. He doesn't need policy. The policy is going to be made, all of it is going to be made in the White House. This is what FDR did. Now I'm going to drop a historical factoid on all the NewsNation watchers. You've heard of the term brain thrust, right?
Yes.
Okay. That was invented in Roosevelt's term because Roosevelt surrounded himself with a very few advisors.
Brain trust.
No cabinet people, right. No cabinet people. People like Harry Hopkins, Louis Brandeis, Robert Wagner. You know, if I'm teaching a class, Cuomo, you're out in the hall right now.
That's why they sent me to military school, Bill.
Listen to him. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, it should have been military school in Moscow, as far as I'm concerned. So FDR had this cadre of people, mostly Harvard Law, some Columbia's. Nobody else had any input into Roosevelt's term. 4 of them, just the brain thrust, okay? And it got into brain trust later on. But they were sending a message saying, we are going to push out all of the policy, and you people are going to obey it. And they did. And so I don't even know if Trump knows this or not. I don't know if he's read Confronting the Presidents. But this is the way it's going to be run. Stephen Miller is the most powerful man in the country beside Donald Trump.
Makes sense.
He is going to be passing the policy along. The people that do this, department heads, are going to say, yes, sir, or they're not going to be there. And that is the overarch.
The question that I would have for you, Bill O'Reilly, is this. It's almost as if you're asking folks to ignore the chaos that existed during his first term. And what I'm saying to you is every president wants what their agenda to be exercised. Every president wants you doing what they want you to do. But if, based on what you're saying, is he going to be checked? Is he going to be challenged? Is he going to be prodded? Is he going to be put in court? I'm asking, I'm talking about amongst his cabinet members. Let's say, for example, hypothetically, I mean, God forbid, hypothetically,
Bill
O'Reilly
he's not going to be challenged by his cabinet members.
And that's what I'm saying. You think that's a good thing? Do you think that's a good thing?
I don't think it's anything. I'm reporting now, Stephen A.
Okay.
If you direct a question on a certain person, George W. Bush governed 180 degrees differently. They had individual fiefdoms set up. Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense.
Yep.
Colin Powell, Secretary of State. Those guys had heavyweight input, Cheney as vice president, into Bush's decision-making. Those cabinet members had a lot to say, and a lot of Reagan's people did as well. The cabinet members for Trump will have zero to say. It'll all be run out of the White House. Now, your chaos first term doesn't stack for me. I thought Trump did a pretty good job. So, in the first time around, economically is most important, and overseas was tamped down.
I don't disagree.
So, I disagree with that. Okay? So that's where we are right now. And one more point. You know who did this as well as FDR? Biden did it. None of the Biden appointees had any sway over him at all. You think Mayorkas designed that open border? How about Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation? The airline industry collapsed before his eyes. Nobody did anything. The only experience that Buttigieg had was he has a scooter in South Bend that he'd ride around the neighborhood. That's his transportation experience, okay? So Biden did exactly what Trump is trying to do. But that'll never be reported, of course.
Well, I'll tell you what was reported is that Biden is doing none of it. It's all the shadow government. It's all the cabinet. So, you know, I mean, you gotta pick your poison in terms of what was said. I was going to talk about what Nikki Haley said, that these people aren't Republican enough that he picked. But given the tone of the conversation, it doesn't matter. Let me jump to something else, which is how he's going to be covered this time versus the first time. Both of you guys picked up on the MSNBC morning power couple going down to kiss the ring with Trump. They say, you know, we had to meet with him. I don't have any problem with people meeting with the president-elect. I mean, that's an opportunity any journalist would take. What is your take on it, Stephen A. Smith, for people who haven't seen the show?
Well, Bill, on the Stephen A. Smith show this evening, you know, I basically called it out, and I said, wait a minute, you associated him with Nazis. You called him a racist. Did you tell him that to his face when you went to Mar-a-Lago? Did you confirm that you still feel that way? Or did you turn around and retract that statement? And did you turn around and retract that statement to his face and say, hey, that you were wrong?
I don't even think he requested an apology.
Well, again, it doesn't
Trump
have
just
to.
wants to do business.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, being an adult, if that's what you did, first of all, it shouldn't have been done in the first place, particularly by folks in that position. And secondly, if you did it, but then you asked to meet with him, it wasn't the other way around, and then you met with him, did you acknowledge that you said those things, apologize for it, or stand in front of his face and tell him how you felt? Because I think that goes a long way towards really redirecting, to use their word, in terms of the direction that they were going in and how they needed to redirect and, look things over. But I was listening to Bill O'Reilly earlier today on the radio, and he was, I'll let him speak about that, because I thought he was giving outstanding, commentary as it pertains to MSNBC and what the future holds. And I'll leave it to you, Bill, to go from there.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, here's what happened with Joe and Mika. They were ordered to go to Mar-a-Lago by Comcast, the parent company out of Philadelphia. They just didn't show up, okay? And Trump said, oh, this is great. Here they come, going to kiss my you-know-what, and we'll get photo ops, which they did. But Comcast said, you two, we're going to have to try to mend some cliche fences, and you two are going to go in there, and you're going to try to tamp it down. Because Comcast knew the next day they were going to announce that MSNBC is vapor. That is a huge media story.
Why is it
Enormous.
vapor? Just because they're spinning it off and putting them in they're spinning off a bunch of brands.
There's no spin-off.
There is. It's a spin-off company.
There's no spin-off. See, you buy the propaganda, Cuomo.
Oh, okay.
See what I mean about
I'm just saying
people?
what's being reported.
All right.
But what do you know?
Yeah, I know, but why would you believe what's being reported? You want the real story? Here
it
comes.
Please.
So they're uncoupling their word, Comcast, MSNBC from NBC News. That means MSNBC has no resources at all. None. They're not going to be able to pay these people millions of dollars, Rachel Maddow, whatever she's making. NBC News is saying, we don't want you around. Why? Because NBC News' numbers, Lester Holt and the Today Show, are catastrophe, because half the country equates NBC News with MSNBC, and they won't watch. So NBC is desperately trying to save the mothership of information, and they have to throw MSNBC overboard. They're not putting anything into MSNBC. They want to sell it. So where's Georgie Soros now? Georgie's buying radio stations. You can get MSNBC for nothing. They'll give it to you. They don't want any more of this. Why? Because it's hateful. Not because it's so far left. The whole NBC Comcast hierarchy is far left. But it's hateful. They hate Trump. They hate people who vote for Trump. Everybody knows that. And you know what's next? The View. ABC News is going to have to cut ties with The View. And you saw that today or yesterday when Sunny Hostin had to read a legal statement in the middle of a segment. The lawyers get Whoopi Goldberg's ear and it said, we're bringing a statement in on a teleprompter. She reads it. So it is over for these far left networks. Done, never coming back. Dracula's stake in the heart. Who benefits? NewsNation may, but CNN, which is on the ropes too, will probably get some MSNBC viewers.
Wow.
There you go.
What do you think of that?
Well, I'm certainly not going to accuse him of not making sense, because I think that Morning Joe going to Mar-a-Lago speaks volumes. That's number one. Number two, I just think it's important, the point that Bill O'Reilly is bringing up. For years, he had the no spin zone. For years, you've been on television. And no matter what opinions people may have had about you guys, the fact of the matter is that you never spoke about people the way that we heard people speaking about Trump going into this election. And as again, putting myself on Front Street, I didn't vote for Trump. What did I say? What I said was I think the presidency is a statesmanship position to some degree. I didn't like the way that he divides the country, and I didn't think the country needed that. What you never heard me saying was the kind of stuff that you heard on Morning Joe and beyond. And I think that because of that as Bill O'Reilly just stated, it's not the difference of opinion. It's not the different ideology. It's the hatefulness. Now, I'm working at that time, so I haven't seen a lot of MSNBC in that regard. But based on everything that I've read and the things that you've heard them say, and what he just articulated about them being ordered to go up to Mar-a-Lago, It all makes a load of sense, and I'm not in a position to be questioning Bill O'Reilly, who's been right more than he's been wrong.
I don't know what the decoupling is about. If it's about tone versus P&L, I don't know.
Right.
And we'll see. It'll come out. But it wasn't just MSNBC. They spun off. They got like 8-9 brands they're putting in this new vehicle. But be that as it may.
Yeah, but that's the big one.
Right. It is. Well, yeah,
that's the big one.
That's the biggest one. But the backstory.
Do you have any questions, Cuomo?
No, I have something to say. That's why the name on the show is mine.
Go ahead, me.
The interesting part here is the backstory. Before they hated Trump, they did more to get Donald Trump elected, Joe and Mika, than anybody in the media. I am as guilty as any for giving Trump a lot of attention and his rallies during the campaign, okay? There's an explanation for that, too, but doesn't matter right now. What does matter is they loved him. They were on videotape. Bill will remember this. In a commercial break, asking Trump what they should talk about when they come back. And if I did that, okay, I would have been fired. And they liked me at the time there. And it would have been donezo for me. So to me, what it reeks of, Bill and Stephen, is opportunism. That this was never an act of conscience.
No, it's money.
Them. It was just money. And now they need it, so they go. As we have seen other people do, who once went at it with Trump and now are going there and they're standing at his rallies and they're doing whatever they're doing. All right, I got to jump. Bill O'Reilly, thank you for the lesson.
Dusty's giving me the rap. One more.
Nobody raps Bill O'Reilly.
Confronting the president's number 4. On
Number
the New York
4,
Times
what
this
happened?
Sunday. You guys got to read this.
What happened?
Come on, it's been out for 10 weeks, Cuomo.
I don't know.
Melania happened.
I know. Melania
and because
happened.
we all agree, essentially, I think before we go to break, we should do the Trump dance. You ready?
I'm not doing the Trump dance.
Oh, look at Bill.
That I'm not doing.
You know what? You slept on his skills.
Yeah.
Did you see the head with the hands?
It wasn't bad, Bill. It wasn't bad.
You take yourself too seriously. You're too good to dance.
No, I'm not doing the try this out or this. I ain't doing the
Do you
Trump
have
dance.
a signature move?
I have a couple.
Oh, my.
I have a couple.
I shouldn't even have asked. Gentlemen, thank you as always. Appreciate the perspective. Good men, great for the audience. Thank you. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. I have a couple. Coming up, Trump's overwhelming victory, right? In terms of he got both houses. I know how many votes. I know it was under 300,000 votes across a bunch of states. I know less people came out. But he has both houses of Congress now under his control and the White House. Give it to him. Now, on the Democrat side, they either deny it or they're just blaming people. So I want to bring in a man who oozes integrity. He is at the top of the Democratic food chain, and he is on your screen right now. Congressman Clyburn is here to talk about what the country needs to do and how the Democrats need to be part of it. Next. Our next guest is such an important man that Stephen A. Smith wanted to be here just for the conversation. And if he feels so motivated to involve himself, he will. If you want to talk about the Democrats and going forward, okay? And look, they took a loss that was bigger than they could have ever expected, all right? Why did one of the most esteemed leaders of the party tell everybody to just chill out? Why he said that and what he believes happens next and what the Democrats' role is. One of my favorite people to talk to in politics. South Carolina member of Congress, James Clyburn, joins us now. Sir, always a pleasure. And in advance, always thankful for you in my life. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the family.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
So why chill out? Why not be in panic and blaming and this wasn't supposed to happen and maybe it was rigged? Why do you not echo any of the sentiments that we hear elsewhere?
Well, if you look at all the returns and all of the stuff that was being said right after the elections, we found out within the last 24 hours that Trump's vote is now less than 50% of the American people. So that means that over half of the voters did not vote for him. So where is this mandate that everybody is talking about? We also know when you look at the results in 3 states that were the difference, that is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, 0.5% in one state, 1% in the other, and 1.5% in the other. So we did not have any kind of a mandate. There was not any kind of a wipeout. And so if you just chill out and give things time to assess, then I think you can make better plans about how to go forward.
I like the
people
manner.
who started reacting.
I like the manner to wait and see, find your opportunities. I want to hear your ideas about how much Democrats should try to join in if the initial piece of legislation is immigration, and how much they should put their arms around it, because that was a big issue for you guys and it certainly needs fixing. But you are a pro of pros when it comes to the business. The numbers don't matter. It's what happens as the result of the game. It's not that, you can lose 10-0 or you can lose 2-1. But you lost, Congressman. You lost the House, you lost the Senate, and you lost the White House. That's a loss. That is a message from the American people, no?
Absolutely. I'm not saying we didn't lose. Yes, we lost. But that's not meaning that we have to dwell on that. Stephen A. Smith is there. He's a sports guy, and he knows full well. You play the game, you lose the game, you come back tomorrow, and you design how you should win.
He has a metaphor about that.
So you don't keep doing this.
Listen to how he sees it.
First of all, Representative Clyburn, it's an honor and a privilege to talk to you, sir. I've never had the pleasure of talking to you before. It's an honor and a privilege. But I must ask you, and I was using the metaphor when we were talking during the commercial break. I said, if you shoot a bunch of jump shots, all right, and you can't make them, one or two things going to happen to you. You're either going to have to go to the hole or you're going to get benched, because no coach is going to leave you out there to continue missing shot after shot after shot. I understand what you're saying about the fact that he's got 50% of the vote right now, and it was relatively closer than people anticipated. But in the end, you lost the White House, you lost the Senate, you lost the House. I'm wondering, as you sit here and reflect, can you definitively point to something that the Democrats did that they absolutely positively should not and cannot do for the next go-round?
Well, since we're dealing with sports here, one of the first things you do is look at the management. And so when you don't win, you might fire the coach. A long time before you get to the players, you look at the coaching that's taking place. And quite frankly, I will admit from my own assessment that we may need to look not just at the players, but about who makes the decision. That's why I'm so pleased with where we are today with Hakeem Jeffries, because I've watched him. I see how he manages our caucus. He's doing a great job. I think he will bring this party back to where it needs to be in the next election. That is where I think we ought to be making the adjustments. And then when we look at our national election 4 years from now, we need to have a new coach.
Oh, yeah, but
and a new coaching staff.
But Representative Clyburn, with all due respect, Hakeem Jeffries was there when Kamala Harris was running for the presidency. He was there when Biden, obviously Biden is still the president, before he elected to step aside. Nancy Pelosi was around. You were around. There were an abundance of people who were around that obviously are highly respected and knowledgeable and know what it takes to win. When you say you got to look at the players, but in the same breath, you're saying that you're comfortable with Hakeem Jeffries. As a matter of fact, you're enthused. Well, then what kind of change are you alluding to when you talk about the change that needs to be made in terms of management, coaching, or whatever analogy you want to use?
You know as well as I do that Joe Biden was elected 4 years ago. Hakeem Jeffries was elected 2 years ago. So the whole thing was set in place before he ever came on the scene. He is now in the process of being our leader. He is today our leader. He was not our leader 4 years ago. He was not our leader when we put this whole campaign together. And there were a lot of things in this campaign that I took exception to, and I've made it very well known what I felt about it.
I've heard it several times from several quarters. And then we just hear the DNC just dismissed a big bunch of its staff. People had anticipated that wouldn't happen. There seems to be a shakeup. So in terms of correcting, all that matters, right? Can't change the past. Future's unknown. You got to focus on now. When you come out of the gate with this administration, do you believe that Democrats should do something that the Republicans would never do, which is join and say, you want to do immigration, let's do it right now. You guys are in control, but let's see how much stuff we can get in this bill that's going to happen anyway, so that we can say this issue won't beat us again. Do you think the Democrats should join?
We've always done that, Chris.
Nah.
Just look at the last year. How do we pass the debt ceiling? The Republicans do it. Hakeem Jeffries sat down with the Speaker of the House, and we provided the votes that were necessary to raise the debt ceiling. You look at
that
it,
is true.
How do we keep the government open?
That is true, but that's like such existential brinksmanship.
So don't say we didn't do it.
I know, I hear you, and I don't mean to interrupt. You know, I love you. What I'm saying is you have to do that, right? Because you know what happens if they don't meet the debt ceiling. We've lived that before. It doesn't work well. But I'm saying on this piece of affirmative legislation, ordinarily, the Democrats have not wanted to work with the Republicans, except for that bill that you did in the last minutes of the game that wasn't a great bill that Langford helped out on in the Senate. Do you think that they should embrace it more with immigration than they have in the past in terms of working with Republicans? And then I'll give you the last question.
Well, I think we did. And let me just know, we don't just get into this. I worked with Javier Becerra back when I was whipped the first time to do an immigration bill. It was a great bill, in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember.
We sat there waiting on the Senate to work on it, and the Senate tanked it then. And we did the same thing this time. A great bill that they came up with, and thanks to Senator Langford, we did. We agreed to it on our side, as well as the Democrats in the Senate, and then they got a phone call from Donald Trump.
That part's true
saying,
about the call.
No, don't do this, because I would like to run on this issue, and they refused to do it.
My last question
So let's call it the way it is.
Yes, sir. My last question to you, Representative Clyburn, is this, and I'm the novice amongst the three of us in this conversation, but I have to ask. I'm trying to figure out what you guys are going to do over the next 4 years when they've got control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. I'm just saying the next 2 years. I apologize. I'm trying to figure out what's the plan. How are you going to get anything done when you've basically lost power over the next 2 years? How are you going to get anything done with this administration, considering all the things that were said and the level of vitriol that appears to exist between the two sides?
Well, once again, we're going to have to raise the debt ceiling. You think they're going to be able to do that alone? You don't think the Speaker is going to have to come to Hakeem Jeffries to keep the government open? Yes, we are going to work with them, and we'll hold ourselves out to the American people, saying what we're doing. We'll let them see and let them compare. And I do believe that we are going to be very satisfied with what they see. But just remember, the American people voted us out, and we're going to have to live with what the current composition of the Congress is, and we're going to have to live with this president. And then let's see in the next 6 months or 8 months, and then I think you'll see definition coming to the differences between us and them. And that's what we're going to run on in the next election, the differences between us and them.
Got it.
And I'm very satisfied the vast majority of the American people, that over 51% that did not vote for Trump, they will put us back in power.
We'll see what those final numbers are, but I got to tell you, Congressman, to end on a sports analogy, you got double teamed here, but you still made it to the basket and made your points. And I appreciate having you always. You are always welcome here. And it was nice to make the introduction for Steve.
Well, I'm not a basketball player, but I was a pretty good baseball player, and so I know the difference.
Well, let me tell you, you are one of the best players at the toughest game in the world, which is politics. So best to you, and we'll continue the conversation as the policies become more apparent. Congressman James Clyburn, appreciate it. Break is 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Stephen A., thank you very much. I want to give you a roundup when we come back. There's been movement in the Diddy situation on two really important levels. I have them both for you when we come back. Thank you, brother. That was great. Important update, two levels of the Diddy situation. First one is, and there's actually a third, which I'll get to at the end, 5 new lawsuits filed against Sean Diddy Combs. Not new types of allegations, but again, the celebrity defendants is being dangled, that there are other big names involved. But now one of those high-profile celebrities is fighting back, suing the attorney who has been bringing the majority of these cases, 120 of the alleged victims, okay, are all with this one outfit. So what does this mean? Joining us now, someone who knows. Trial attorney, legal analyst, Misty Maris. Please tell me.
All right, Chris, so we have 5 new civil lawsuits that were filed, and this is in addition to right now bringing the tally up to over 30. We don't know whether or not any of these civil lawsuits, which have similar allegations to what we've seen before relating to drugging and sexual abuse, whether there's going to be any overlap with the criminal case. Is there going to be a superseding indictment that loops in some of these new alleged victims or any of these allegations? Unclear at this point, but Diddy continues to have the criminal case, which is on its way to trial in May, in addition to all of these civil lawsuits, which he also has to defend, which brings up the lawsuit that you just raised relating to an anonymous, a John Doe, Los Angeles quote unquote celebrity who is suing Tony Busby for civil extortion and intentional infliction of emotional distress, saying that he's bringing these claims for the purpose of extorting large sums of money and that the claims are false and frivolous. Now, Chris, fine line between what's extortion and a pre-litigation demand letter, a demand letter that says, hey, I'm going to file this and it's going to be public and I'm going to file a civil suit if you don't want to settle. Valid. When it goes beyond that, and here the allegation is that there's a ticking clock in some of the communications and threatening other legal ramifications such as criminal issues, that can cross that line. So that's to be hashed out in court. We don't know who that individual is to date.
Let me ask you something. The judge gave a little coded language in his next bail hearing for Diddy where he was like, hey, you're going to have to prove to me, state, that, or, you know, federal, the prosecutors here, that this is different than the Abercrombie and Fitch case where the guy got out even though he had similar allegations. What do you think the chance is that Diddy gets out on bail?
That was a positive for Diddy. Also, some notes that were seized from his jail cell were excluded. The problem for him is going to be if any of that evasive